Good evening. Welcome to Public Forum. Giving a jolt to the Congress, the DMK today pulled out of the UPA government at centre for allowing watering down of the US resolution against Sri Lanka at the UNHRC and not considering its suggestions on the matter. Karunanidhi said that if the UPA government accepts their demands by Friday and reworks the resolution against Sri Lanka, then he may do a rethink on withdrawing support. The DMK also wants the parliament to adopt a resolution against Sri Lanka. While New Delhi has been traditionally wary of supporting country-specific resolutions as it may backfire in the case of Kashmir, Colombo's proximity to Beijing has also got New Delhi worried in the recent years. External Affairs Minister earlier had said that the Indian government does not want to play the role of a big brother with respect to Sri Lanka, but they do want Lankan Tamils to live a life of dignity. The Sri Lankan forces have been accused of killing thousands of minority Tamils. So almost 4 years since the end of the war, the situation in Sri Lanka is far from a just peace. Tonight on Public Forum, we discuss the Sri Lankan Tamils issue and what should be India's stand. With me, Dr. Sreeram Chaulia, Dean of Jindal School of International Affairs. Thank you very much, Dr. Chaulia, for joining us in this program. Professor Chaulia, if I have to take your opinion here, you know the major development this morning was that the DMK has moved out of the UPA. What ramifications this could have? Because as Mr. Elangovan also said, that this is a very sentimental issue in Tamil Nadu. Do you really feel that India as such has a Sri Lankan policy, or this is primarily because of the domestic politics and the domestic pressure that the country is now working hard to get its statistics right on the issue?
Yeah, I mean, it has to be a long, strategized policy that transcends the immediacy of these votes and also the pressures of domestic politics. It's important. I mean, you cannot ignore domestic politics. Foreign policy has always been influenced by it. We must take it into account as long as it's in a positive direction and is in the larger national interests. In this case, the public sentiment, the groundswell in Tamil Nadu is really, it's like an outpouring. And people have been, there is a sense of injury in the hearts of the Tamil people who feel, that their brethren have been cold-shouldered and marginalized and discriminated in Sri Lanka, in the north and east. So clearly the big issues of justice, it's not human rights and democracy are smaller issues, the bigger issues of justice for past as well as ongoing crimes. So I think, we will need a policy that marries this intense popular pressure for justice as well as the larger strategic goals that India has in the region and in the world. One thing I would like to say is that, we always talk about China factor, this and that in the foreign policy circles. But the point is, India is being asked at this moment to show that it has some leadership in the region. And so it's actually a call to our
also
image.
There was a calling attention on this particular issue in the Rajya Sabha, where the External Affairs Minister earlier had made it clear that they don't really want to play a big brother role to Sri Lanka. That says a lot because if we look at the diplomatic ties with Sri Lanka, last January, our former External Affairs Minister was there in Sri Lanka. Also, President Rajapaksa was here in India in September. So in a way, do you think that we have been unsuccessful in handling the Tamilian issue through diplomatic ties, because time and again there are people coming from that side and people going from this side as well? Yeah,
I mean, the channels have to be kept open. After all, it's an Indian Ocean country and it has the sea lanes and all those. Sri Lanka is a strategically located country, so we have to keep talking to them. But the point here is not about having some normalized diplomatic discourse or not. The point is about whether the outcomes on the ground there are moving towards a fair outcome, a fair just end, and what can India do to push it towards that? And I think it's been, I would say, thanks to the Tamil people of Tamil Nadu, that the issue has received the salience. Otherwise, it's often the case. You remember Burma. I mean, there were massive abuse of human rights and a military dictatorship. There was no big constituency in India advocating for the rights of the Burmese people, and therefore, we were not showing that leadership that I'm just talking about. And leadership has to transcend tactical considerations. It's got to be value-based. If India says, this is our backyard, then we are responsible for it.
Right, so you're saying that, you're thankful to importantly to the parties, political parties in Tamil Nadu for raising this issue and making this issue significant and interfering in the internal affairs of a particular country. But Professor Chaulia, considering you are an expert on international affairs, do you think this would be wise on the part of India to pass a resolution in Parliament on Sri Lanka? What is also being said, because we've just seen India passing a resolution against Pakistan, because in the National Assembly, Pakistan talked about the killing of Afzal Guru. So in a way, Madam Speaker also made it very clear that there will any interference in our internal matters will not be accepted. So do you think this can be a solution?
It's not a solution, but it's just an escalation matrix.
Right.
The Sri Lankans just don't care to all the entreaties we have made in the past. So clearly we need to also show some spine. And this is one way of doing it, because the executive has to deal with foreign affairs in a more delicate manner. So even though it's arguable whether Sri Lanka is friendly or not, the point is we cannot choose our geography. It's there.
Right.
We cannot antagonize it too much. But Parliament is different. Parliament is the voice of the people. It's not playing a diplomatic game of being nice with somebody. So I think Parliament can do this if there is sufficient will.
But Professor Chaulia, why this double standard? Because the people who also want to know, President Rajapaksa visits our country and he says, I'm still very focused on 13th Amendment plus. And when he goes back in his Independence Day speech, he says that let's focus more on unity than on devolution of power. So why such double standards?
They're bluffing and they're fooling us, right? And thanks to the parties and the public pressure, that's the only way we are being asked to, change direction. Because, we have very few levers left. After the collapse of the LTTE, we have very little leverage, right, on what we can do. And they keep playing the China card. It's a kind of blackmail, and we've given into it.
Is it also because the opposition in Sri Lanka also very weak? When we talk about the leadership on the Tamil issue is also very weak in Sri Lanka?
Yeah, and what they have not allowed, as was rightly pointed out, is independent, genuine power base for Tamil politicians in the north and east. Mm-hmm. They basically choose puppets and they want them to be in charge. Mm-hmm. They cannot trust a genuine devolution. So that's why, because they fear that will be a stepping stone to another secessionist revolt to start. So there's just no trust in the communities. India should offer to do many things apart from the, the human rights resolution. We should try to, engage all the parties across the spectrum, especially the UNP. The opposition has been highly critical of the ruling Sri Lanka Freedom Party. And they are more moderate and, I would say, liberal on this issue. And
ironically, Sri Lanka is one country which enjoys the highest development credit from India. So in a way, it is also time for us to monitor the way the aid is being, the development aid is being used in Sri Lanka. But Professor Chaulia, the government is in a fix at this stage. 21st, 22nd of March will be a deciding day that the way India votes in UNHRC.
Yeah, I've been reading interestingly that the composition of the council has changed from last year. Russia, China are not even on the membership this year because it goes through rotation. Mm-hmm. So this time there is a possibility actually that it may be passed unanimously with a few abstentions. Mm-hmm. And it will look it will look like a black mark on India if we abstain when majority 90% or more of the members vote in favor of it. Mm-hmm. We have to think about comfort in numbers also as a diplomatic strategy. I mean, we don't want to be isolated. It would be a slap on our face that the so-called hegemon of South Asia, let's call it the superpower of South Asia, is on the wrong side of history. So I think one argument is that there may not even be a vote because it will be passed unanimously, and as long as we are not abstaining or voting against, I think we are doing justice to the cause.
So what I also want to know, Professor Chaulia, that in be it the last resolution or be it this particular resolution, how these resolutions help, because it is being said that no matter how many resolutions we pass, it is important for us to pressurize, to tell the Sri Lankan government this is a wrongdoing and will not tolerate it. Just passing a resolution, just telling for an international probe, because what is happening in Sri Lanka, all of us know.
Yeah, the international probe usually don't work because states use a sovereignty argument. If you look at Rwanda, for example, after the genocide, they had to have a conducive regime of what is called the RPF, the Rwanda Patriotic Front, which is pushing for investigation and for war crimes and is cooperating with international. So as long as the Rajapaksas are there, it's not going to work because, it's like forensic evidence, mass graves, exhuming the bodies, looking at infrastructure destruction, all those cannot happen when the host state is not cooperating, right? So there is a limit to international mechanisms. So in the long run, the only thing which will work is a change in the domestic political structure of Sri Lanka. So India should be working towards that in the long run. I mean, we are not in the business of trying to fix elections or trying to bring a particular party into power. We cannot do that, we don't do that. But what we must certainly do is strengthen the moderate forces, the tolerant forces, even among the Sinhalese and as well as in the North and East. Okay. And we'll need to look beyond this resolution, because I'm pretty sure it will be passed by a huge majority, and India should not be on the wrong side, and end up with egg on our face.
Right. Well, last...
Voting on the resolution also is important.
True, but irrespective of that, it will be passed with a huge majority. That's clear.
But sustain the pressure. What is also important, keep the pressure on. That is when the Sri Lankan government, will do something about a very critical issue like this. Quickly, Professor Chaulia.
I just want to add, this is the kind of decisive moment for us to show our leadership. We often tout the fact that we are the world's largest democracy and all that. This is the testing time. India should emerge on the side of morality and bend towards justice.
Okay, bend towards justice and be on the side of morality. Completely out of time. Thank you very much, Mr. Subbu, Professor Chaulia, Mr. Elangovan, and Mr. Shekhar for joining us in this program. And that's all we have for you in this edition of Public Forum. Thank you very much for watching, and let's hope that India vote against Sri Lanka on the 21st of March. Thank you.